My name is Kane. I'm the marketing director here at TreeHouse. TreeHouse exists to provide healthy and efficient and sustainable solutions for people and their homes. We've taken solar and made it simple and accessible for everybody. So come by and check it out. Today we had a little class with ImagineSolar, which is fantastic. Michael Kuhn is one of the main reasons places like TreeHouse exist, with all his great work in the solar industry.
So why solar, why now? My entry into the solar industry actually started quite some time ago. And so I put this up here for a little bit of comic relief. This is like that 70s show, if you start to look at the fashions and the hairstyles and such. This was the first solar project I was involved with back in 1975. I was a student at University of Texas, and this was solar thermal, because at that time, solar photovoltaics was way, way too expensive. It was appropriate for space programs like NASA and for remote applications, but certainly, and off-grid applications, if you could afford it. We believed that solar thermal would be growing, and that was the case in the 70s until government incentives were done away with starting about 1980, at which point we saw a lot of lack of interest in solar thermal. So this is a project I did with the University of Texas. I was a student. I saw an opportunity to actually volunteer for the summer and work on this project. And so these solar collectors you see are actually...
Did you want to hold it?
Yes, I can hold this. Okay. So the solar collector is in the picture next to that skinny fellow, which is actually me, quite some time ago. Those were handmade. So we actually these were the days when you would make your own solar collectors and put them into a system. The picture on the right is the rest of the team. They were all engineers. I was not an engineer yet, but I knew how to work with wood and glass and metal, and so I did the actual construction kind of work on it. Well, it's been quite an adventure in solar, since that time. But it wasn't until really the last decade that things started to take off. All right, and so this is showing the worldwide. No, this is the United States solar PV capacity that was actually installed each year for almost a decade there. And you'll see that in the beginning, 2003, there wasn't a whole lot. Although we were actually very excited because 2005 is double 2003. And so the charts I would show then were a different scale, and it was like, wow, 2005, there's twice as much that's been installed since 2002 or 2003. And then likewise, 2007 was like double what was installed in 2005. And we were very excited. And now, when you look at the chart and you start including the last several years, all that just looks like noise, right? And so you see that there has been just this tremendous sort of tipping point that has taken place in the United States just in the span of a few years. In fact, most of the capacity that's now in place has been put in place really just in the past 5 years, okay? So quite a bit of growth in 2012, and you see the breakdown between utility and non-residential versus residential. And this is a chart of capacity, okay? So I'll show you another chart later that actually shows the number of installations, so you can kind of see where the work is. Obviously if you're doing a utility scale, that's a lot of capacity for one project, right? But still very healthy growth for residential and non-residential as well as utility. This chart is showing the cumulative amount of installed capacity for solar in the United States. And what's interesting about this is you can see where in about 2011 we had about 4 gigawatts of solar total throughout the country, and then that number almost doubled just in 1 year. So like another 3.5 gigawatts was added in the year of 2012. Going further, here's a demand forecast that was made some time ago, like back in 2011. And what you see is that the most optimistic forecast for what would be done in 2012 really was the orange line and the blue line. And so Solar Buzz had a pretty good handle on it in terms of what they thought would be added, about the 3.5 gigawatts. And there were others that had a much lower forecast for 2012, but it appears Solar Buzz had the right idea, and of course they're seeing continued growth as we go forward into the future. Now here's an interesting slide. So this is what was installed in terms of new generation capacity in 2012. And what you'll see is lots of natural gas, a lot of wind power, but also a lot of solar PV. And in fact, there was more solar photovoltaics that was installed than new coal plant production. Now, this is at a time when in the United States we're seeing continuing demand for more electricity, and we're very pleased as renewable energy advocates to see that a lot of that new generation that's being installed is wind power and solar photovoltaics, as opposed to further coal plants. Okay, so what's been happening in Texas? In Texas, this would be cumulative. So since the beginning of solar, right, in 2010, we had about 30 megawatts in place. And what we saw was more than a doubling of that in 2011. And Texas actually became 10th in the nation in terms of the amount of solar in this state versus other states. In 2012, there was a healthy increase of 63%, and but it wasn't enough to keep us number 10, so we actually fell to number 13 compared to other states. But still a 63% increase in 2012. I don't have numbers yet on 2013, but those will be coming out probably within a month or so, and we'll be able to see what happened there. We expect that there will still be double-digit growth. A lot of additional capacity is coming online due to programs like the one in San Antonio, and we also have plans to do a lot more right here in Central Texas, in Austin. All right, so this is a map of Austin with no solar. We got the first solar incentive program started in 2004. So we're not going to spend too much time on this map because I'm going to flip to the next one, which shows you all the actual solar that has been installed as of 2010. And so we'll do that again, where we'll go back to no projects, and then we'll jump forward. And every one of these green dots and blue dots actually represents how much solar we've been able to do. So it shows you, the power of government incentives. When we got that rebate started in 2004, we came out with $5 per watt of a rebate. And at the time, we didn't do a lot of analysis about should it be $4, should it be $6. $5 seemed to be the sweet spot, and we were right. Although there wasn't a lot of uptick yet in 2004 and 2005. The program hasn't really taken off in a big way until more recently. Currently the rebate is okay, $1.25. But it did start out at $5. Okay, so here's Here's the Austin Solar PV rebate program statistics for the last fiscal year. So this is 2016. And so we installed like over 4 megawatts of solar in that fiscal year. All right, just to give you some perspective, a typical home system will be about 3 kilowatts, which would be like 3,000 watts, and 1 megawatt would be like 1,000,000 watts. Okay, so 4 megawatts is a lot of solar in 1 year just for one city. Because when you compare that to the overall solar capacity since we started the incentive program, that represents like 36% of the capacity was done just in fiscal year 2013 compared to the overall to date cumulative of 12. So in 1 year we added 4 on top of what would have been about 8 that was in place, and we've added 63% more in just 1 year. And when you look at the actual projects, what you see is for residential that from the beginning of the rebate program, there's been 2,629 homes that have gone solar. And 719 of those did that in fiscal year 2013. So, so 27% of all homes that have done solar now did it just recently. And then looking at the budgets, for the incentives, it was a $7.35 million budget for fiscal year 2013. And what we were pleased to see is that the city has come up with $7.5 million. So they're continuing the funding of their rebate programs and their performance-based incentive programs for commercial projects this year. So that's good news, and we expect to see really even more solar being installed this fiscal year than last year. The City Council created what they call a local solar advisory board, and the LSAC. I was very pleased to be able to serve on this myself, but we actually have challenged the city to think really, really big. 400 megawatts of solar by the year 2020. Right now, they've actually got a 200 megawatt goal, but we believe that more than double that could actually be accomplished. Of that 400 megawatts, we actually want 200 of that to actually be local, because we believe in building sustainable communities. We believe in creating jobs here at home, and one thing about solar on people's homes and businesses is that it's not the type of thing that can be outsourced. I mean, it leads to local community strength and jobs, and so we have a goal for local. And the City Council actually, just at the end of last year, said that indeed half of whatever goal we have for solar needs to include local solar, and not just be solar power plants out in West Texas, for instance. West Texas is a pretty good site for solar because of the solar resource is stronger there than what we have here, but you don't get a lot of sort of local economic benefit from those kinds of projects. Even if we do 400 megawatts by 2020, that would represent from 5 to 6% of the total energy requirement for the Austin Energy Service area. All right, so it's big numbers for solar, but it's still just single percentages in terms of how much electricity we actually consume. So keep that in perspective as well. You have other very interesting situations, like in Germany, where we know that they've had situations where like half of all their electricity is coming from wind power plus solar power. Okay, so 50% or greater. Just absolutely amazing. So we know it can be done in terms of using more renewable energy to take care of our electricity needs than just 5%. So even this 400 megawatts is only basically a 5 to 6% adoption of solar. All right, so I talked about capacity. Now this is looking at sort of the number of installations, all right? And so while we know that utility scale represents a lot of capacity, what you're seeing is in terms of the number of installations that it's residential that is king. And so there's more people, a lot more people doing residential installations and commercial in terms of number of projects. And so this is where you see a very healthy increase in the residential market in terms of numbers. And what you need to remember is that it's not just the construction work that's going on here. There's also sales and marketing and accounting and finance and project management as well. So this is not just about installer jobs. So let's take a look at what's happening with jobs. This is from the Solar Foundation, and what they do is they survey the industry, and they came out with their latest report showing job growth rankings in the year 2012 through 2012 into 2013. And they found that there was a 20% growth in solar jobs in 2013 versus 2012. That's pretty healthy. And they've actually quantified it as to what the total number of jobs in the United States are, how many of those represented this 20% was an additional 24,000 jobs created across the country. And I heard another statistic that said that there's more people working in solar now in the United States than actually are working in automobile manufacturing. And so, when we talk about, and we are talking about manufacturing automobiles, we're not talking about the service stations and repair stations and everything that's part of that infrastructure. But it still gives you more perspective as to what is happening here. More people working in solar than actually are working in manufacturing plants for transportation. Texas moved from 8th place to 6th place in 2013 in terms of job creation. And when you look at the actual numbers, you see it's a 28% increase in Texas solar jobs in 2013 versus 2012. One of the things I want to talk about is why would you want to do solar on your home? And so I put this slide together, and I'll spend a couple of minutes talking about that. What we see is that the pricing in Texas, what it costs you to put it on your home, is the lowest in the country. So this is actually, it's good to be a Texan because of this. This is like numbers from Lawrence Berkeley National Labs, and they just surveyed what was the typical bid or proposal that homeowners were getting for solar, and they found that pricing is very competitive here in Texas. We still have rebates for energy efficiency as well as solar, and the Austin Energy Program, because they do have these rebates, it's a fantastic deal. And I do want to promote the idea of doing energy efficiency. It is the first kind of project you ought to be thinking about. If you haven't done that, don't rush to solar. Do the energy efficiency, get the rebates for that, and then start thinking about doing the solar project. Because basically the best kilowatt hour is the kilowatt hour that you no longer have to consume. So before thinking about producing it yourself, reduce how much you actually need, and you do have this great combination of rebates for both. Now the rebate program though, right now it's $1.25 per watt. Started out at $5. It was $1.50 per watt not that long ago. It's going to become $1 per watt at some point in the future. I don't know when exactly. We'd like to have kind of a plan, and this is one thing that we recommended so that people would know how to plan. But rebates are supposed to decline over time. You know, any kind of government incentives, the idea is to stimulate a market and to, but as the market grows, you know, to reduce those incentives accordingly. And so I can see where it could be, you know, $1 watt before the end of this year. I mean, it's kind of up to when Austin Energy decides to do it. You know, certainly going into 2015, yeah, I think it's safe to predict that we'll be no longer at $1.25, you know, per watt. You could wait to see if maybe the pricing on equipment is going to come down, you know, as the years go on, but be mindful that rebates are also going to be coming down at the same time. And so what they're trying to do is just kind of like track, you know, what the proposals are, and then reduce the rebates, you know, accordingly. There was one time that the rebate was so rich and pricing came down so quickly that there was a few months where there was sort of a run on the bank because solar essentially was free. And this is when Austin Energy kind of said, wait a minute, and they suspended their rebate program for a couple months until they could recalculate what the rebate should be, and then start it up again. So what you see is government policy kind of follows the industry rather than lead the industry in terms of deciding these rebate levels. And so there can still be sweet spots like at $1.25 where you kind of want to go ahead and lock that in and do your project, you know, ahead of them deciding that it should be, you know, 25 cents less. Then this, the federal tax credit. This is a really excellent deal. I mean, if you are going to owe the IRS any money, you can actually get a 30% federal tax credit if you do a solar project on your home. And so this is not a tax deduction, it's actually a tax credit. And so if you have, you know, if the IRS wants to collect $6,000 from you for your federal income tax, but you have a 30% tax credit of $3,000 because you did a solar project, then that's $3,000 that you do not pay to the IRS. It's basically $3,000 that went to your own solar project instead. And that is certainly, we expect that it will go away as planned at the end of 2016. And well, it doesn't go away entirely, it just goes from 30% to 10%. And I don't see any reason why it would stay at 30%. I think with the federal budget being what it is, that they're going to let it go ahead and run out or change from 30 to 10% at the end of 2016. So January 2017, it would no longer be 30%. And there is, I put a or sooner there because it's with any, you know, at the federal level, I mean, you know, they can decide to defund programs or change, you know, tax credits at any time. So we don't, you know, I mean, there would be quite a lot of pushback from the solar industry if they decided to end it sooner than the end of 2016. But it's not unthinkable that they might actually take that measure, right? And then you've got these innovative financing options that are available, and I haven't seen an actual TreeHouse proposal, and so I don't know the details, and I haven't tried to analyze it or compare it. I'm happy that they're hosting us today, but I'm not trying to do a commercial for TreeHouse, but I will say that it actually sounds pretty good, because they told me that they're doing like a 2.99% interest rate for the financing, if you want to do the financing, and no lien. This morning I looked at my credit union to see what it was for like home improvement loans, and it was 2.99%, but they're going to put a lien on my house. You know, so here's a home improvement loan, the same rate as my credit union, but I don't have to go through the process of actually having a lien placed upon my home. And no cash up front and no monthly cash flow impact. So what they tell me is they try to structure the financing so that the amount of money you're paying for the loan is equal to the amount of decrease you saw in your bill, coming from Austin Energy. Okay, so this is, in the past, it's always been a hurdle to be able to come up with, the upfront cash, even with the rebate and even with a 30% federal tax credit, just having money that you could use to actually, pay for an installer to do your PV installation. So there's innovative financing options, and others, installers. It's not just TreeHouse, but there's other options, and I encourage you to see what's out there. We've got a representative from Revolve Solar. I'm sure they've got a financing program, and so the key is there's innovative financing programs out there to reduce this barrier, to you making a decision to go forward with a PV system for your home. And in Texas, these solar projects are exempt from property tax, and so that means that you do basically a $10,000 to $20,000 home improvement project that is not supposed to increase the value of your home for the purposes of property taxation. All right, so it's one of the few things you can do where they're not going to hit you with a higher appraisal and then subsequent higher property tax valuations. Here's my societal adoption of new technology. I should give a reference on this. This was actually a book called Crossing the Chasm, where they talk about how new technology goes through this sort of bell curve of adoption. And solar basically is a technology, and there's an adoption curve associated with that, where at the beginning you have technology enthusiasts, you have visionaries that adopt the technology before you actually get into a mainstream market. And I kind of annotated this a little bit, in that category of kind of technology enthusiasts or visionaries, early adopters. Certainly you've had a lot of people who do solar because of that, because they like the idea of having this technology and being able to generate their own electricity, monitor it on their computer, show their friends what they're doing. And I put bass boats there because no one ever tries to calculate like the payback period on a bass boat, right? Okay, let's go ahead and say it's the husband that wants the bass boat because he goes fishing. It could be the wife too, I know, but it's not like we're going to save so much money on the fish I catch. The payback period on this bass boat is going to make it worth the investment. So the financial justification really isn't part of this early adopter reason for going forward. When you get into more of a mainstream market, then you do want to see what the numbers look like. You are looking for the financial justification. You may be concerned about aesthetics. What is it going to look like on your rooftop and such. When you get into kind of the, going even further, those elements are still there. You may be looking for more peer approval because that kind of the latter part of the mainstream market may not want to be the first on their block to actually put solar on the rooftop. What will the neighbors think? Will they think it's ugly, or will they think it's perfectly fine, right? I actually, I don't have any research on this, but I'll bet that when people first started putting window unit air conditioners in their windows, that neighbors were not happy. I bet they thought, look at that box, sticking out of their window, and it makes noise, and they couldn't afford it yet, which increased their unhappiness about it. And of course today, we look at either window units or central AC units as just totally normal. You know, we don't drive down the street and just think, look at all these ugly boxes our neighbors have, because we have them too. And you know, eventually, solar photovoltaics will be the same thing. And you know, eventually, you know, our kids or our grandkids are going to think it's really kind of odd that we've chosen to spend time on a Saturday to even come and think about or go to a you know, short lecture on solar, because they're going to say, what's the big deal? Everyone's got it, right? You know, but it's still a great topic today, and there's still opportunity going forward. Then you got your skeptics, or maybe the latter part of this curve, where there's going to be inertia, and there could be mindsets, you know, where they really are going to be the last ones to ever actually put solar in their home, or maybe they sell the home someday, new buyer buys it, and then they finance a PV system as part of the mortgage, you know, just coming into it, right? And so that's the way those homes actually get to the adoption. In terms of investment, I'm not going to give you investment advice. I'm not going to point at stock and say, do this or do that, but I will show you some interesting stuff I've been reading lately. It is my opinion that doing a home project actually is a pretty good investment. There is a return on investment for that. You're going to have you know, a hedge against electricity pricing going forward. It makes financial justification sense to me, and it increases the value of your home, and there certainly is going to be you know, I mean, the combination of the rebates and the lower barriers to entry because of the financing and the federal tax credit, it makes it a lot easier to go ahead and do it. And to me, it's a great investment. Going beyond that, there's a category called community solar, and this is something that's going to be new to the Austin area. Austin Energy just put out a request for proposals that I saw for the first time just last week. I think it just got posted last week. And so this is where they're going to do a project that's going to be like a 4 megawatt project that's going to allow people to buy into solar without having to have the solar on their home. You know, if you have lots of wonderful trees, do not cut down trees to put on solar. That's, you know, that's, but it's a way that you can actually be an owner of solar assets through buying into a community solar type of approach. One company came to mind that I know about called Mosaic. We'll put these slides on our website. You can download them, and they're doing community solar projects, and there are others. But you know, basically what it is, it's kind of like buying a bond, and so you can invest $200 or more, and they're giving you like a return on your investment that's going to be a lot more attractive than just doing a certificate of deposit, you know, at your local bank. We have a small certificate of deposit, and it's like 0.25%. And unfortunately, every time it comes up for renewal, my wife and I don't act fast enough to say, stop it, don't do it anymore. Because we both have to go down, we both have to sign some paper and say, no, we actually want to get that out of that CD and look at community solar programs instead. But I have noticed, and this is really kind of exciting, that analysts are bullish on the solar industry. Deutsche Bank in January put out this report, which you can find on the internet, and they titled it "Let the Second Gold Rush Begin." And you know, if you've been following the press, you know, over the past year or so, there's been a lot of negative press about solar companies, and I'm not talking about the Solarndra deal, but I'm just talking about solar companies not doing very well. All right, and but I'm seeing now that they're starting to recover, and I'll show you a couple more slides here on that. But first, this is the PV market forecast going out towards 2017 and 2018, where you're still seeing that as far as the global PV market, everyone's in agreement that it's going to continue to grow. All right, so they're not forecasting the end of solar or big decline of solar, but actual pretty healthy growth rates going forward. And then this was a friend of mine sent me this slide that's actually showing these operating margins for companies that make the solar modules. And for the most part, it was the solar module manufacturers that were having difficulties. And you see that, last year was, well, 2012 was pretty rough for them. But you see recovery taking place last year. And so early stage industries, you're going to have companies that are going to be able to continue, other companies that are going to go out of business. We certainly had several dozen automobile manufacturers in the United States in the beginning, and now we're down to 3, and each of which actually is kind of in some kind of ownership model with a European company, I think. And so this is actually pretty encouraging. I'm happy for the manufacturers to actually be making money and be profitable. But one thing to keep in mind though is that because there was so much capacity in terms of solar equipment available on the market, it was a really good deal for the downstream companies that are doing the installations. And so we've seen tremendous growth in those kinds of companies, and because it makes projects a lot cheaper, and then they can pass on the equipment pricing advantages that they're getting to the end consumer, whether you're a homeowner or a business owner. And so that's why you've seen a lot of very attractive proposals now, and you're seeing a lot of homeowners going forward and actually doing solar projects. Okay, so the adventure continues. I've been looking at old photos from the past, and so I started off this lecture with that, and I'll give you another one. So this is like 2002, and we had a little display at the Texas Solar Energy Society booth at the Fredericksburg Renewable Energy Roundup. And at that time, it was one of the first solar workshops, really, that people were doing. I mean, and we had you could sign up for it. It was at that time we didn't have an incentive program. There was no rebate program, but there were still a lot of questions people had about solar and the equipment. And of course, we do continue. ImagineSolar has grown up, and we do a lot more with online training as well as workshops, and we do them for all kinds of individuals. So we've had a lot of entrepreneurs come through our program and start their own solar companies. We have a lot of people that were wanting to change careers and get into solar, and so we continue to do that. We've got a course coming up where we'll be going into a lot more on actual solar PV economics and technical sales. You can pick up a little reminder back there if you're interested in that. So with that, I'll conclude and kind of open things up for questions. Yes, sir.
With regard to that course, is that during the week and work days?
What we're doing is it's online plus online live. And so the online live, you would actually log in at 6 p.m. on a Tuesday night. And so it's a combination. So it's basically an online course, but you're going to have very close interaction with us, because you're going to be able to join in with us live. It'll be me and Doug will be the instructors on that. And then we have a lot of material that we've recorded our lectures, that's actually on our online platform. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Do you have all the information to sell and